Patrick Grady has served just 2 days' suspension from the SNP at Westminster. 2 days is an insult. Throughout this process, the victim has been disregarded. So I hope the First Minister listened to what he had to say this morning. The victim feels betrayed. He said that Patrick Grady and Ian Blackford tried to take advantage of me being young and inexperienced. They did the bare minimum of investigation. He described his life as a result of this ordeal as torture and a living hell. Most depressing of all, he said that the SNP are punishing any victim of this sort of behaviour and punishing anyone that's come forward with a similar complaint as mine. This morning, he also said there are lots of questions for the First Minister to answer as well, and he made it clear they're not getting answered. He said, and these are the victim's words today, "I would like to see Nicola say more on the subject." So will the First Minister now tell the victim what was her reaction on hearing the leaked recording where Ian Blackford encouraged SNP MPs to support the guilty party instead of the victim?
First Minister.
Well, let me say, first of all, in relation to the victim in this case, some days ago, in fact, I have already in a written message said sorry directly to them. I have also confirmed my willingness to meet directly and personally with the victim in this case. When, as I hope it will, that interaction takes place, I will say sorry in person. It's not my behaviour that was investigated, but I am leader of the SNP and I take that responsibility very seriously. The recording of the Westminster Group meeting, I think, reveals part of what was wrong in that case. Indeed, some of the individuals who were recorded at that meeting have already said this themselves. It demonstrated, and I wasn't at the meeting, so whether this is an accurate overall reflection of the discussion, I can't comment on. But what I have heard suggests that more concern was shown for the perpetrator of this behaviour than was shown for the victim of it. I think that is utterly unacceptable, and that is something I will be very clear about. I would repeat the point I made earlier on. We live in a society now, thankfully, where behaviour of this nature is not accepted and is not rightly brushed under the carpet in the way that it used to be. I'm sure everybody in this chamber remembers the 2 years, I think it was in total, that I was subjected to pretty gruelling investigations over separate instances that I would argue came about because I refused to brush certain things under the carpet. It is important that there is transparency, and that it is important that any organisation facing these issues reflects and fully faces up to them. That's what I am going to ensure happens for the SNP. But I will repeat the final point I made, and it will be my final point here as well, Presiding Officer. All parties have faced this. There are 2 Westminster by-elections happening today because of behaviour on the part of Conservative MPs. All parties have faced this. All parties have been criticised, including in these cases, for their handling of these matters. And I think it's important for all of us, and I will simply speak for myself, that somebody in my position should not sit in a glass house throwing stones about these things. We should sort these things out when they arise in our own parties. That's what I intend to do for the SNP, and I think it is what all leaders should do when it arises in their parties as well.
Douglas Ross.
I know the First Minister wants to make this about other parties and other parts of the country, but the fact that we have 2 by-elections today is because Conservative MPs have been suspended and resigned from Parliament. Patrick Grady has been suspended for 48 hours. Yeah. And the First Minister called the recording of the SNP group meeting utterly unacceptable. But that has been public for almost a week, and this is the first we are hearing from the First Minister about it. And her apology will be welcome. But the victim this morning rejected Ian Blackford's apology. He called it a cop-out and a publicity stunt. The victim said that Ian Blackford has only apologised to protect his own position. Again, quoting the victim directly, he said this: "It seems like the SNP under Ian Blackford at Westminster hasn't learned a thing, and they're still trying to close ranks and discredit the victim by not really addressing any of the issues." He added, "Nobody can really seriously believe they're going to make improvements to the procedure as long as Ian Blackford is still in post." The First Minister has to answer that charge. And this is a deep systemic problem in the governing party here in Scotland, and it is an all too familiar tale. Last year, in similar circumstances, Nicola Sturgeon stood up and said in this chamber, and I quote, "It will be a priority for me, for as long as I am First Minister, to ensure that lessons are learned and the trust is re-established, so that anyone who considers in the future that they have suffered sexual harassment has the confidence to come forward and knows that their concerns will be listened to and addressed." First Minister, listening to your own words from a year ago and the victim's words today, isn't it the case that no lessons have been learned?
First Minister.
No, that's not the case, and I stand by every single word that has just been quoted. So obviously the issue we're discussing today, the particular issue we're discussing today, is not a Scottish Government issue, it's an SNP issue. But in the Scottish Government we have a new complaints process in place that was put in place after very elaborate consultation with trade unions to ensure that we have a process in place that people do have confidence in and feel that they are able to use. It's important that we reflect on this situation to ensure that if there are changes needing to be made to the process, these changes are made. In terms of sanction, as I said, an independent process investigated this in detail and recommended the sanction that it considered was appropriate in this case. That's an independent process that all parties are signed up to, and I think all parties should respect. The last point, Presiding Officer, I would make is this. Douglas Ross will characterise what I say in whatever way he chooses. That is up to him. But I think people listening will hear me take these issues extremely seriously. I don't think they will have heard me try to make it all about other parties. But what they will have heard me say is something that I think all of us should reflect on. Because if any of us, if I was standing here saying the SNP's got no issues here, it's all about the Conservatives or Labour, I would be showing that I did not understand the systemic nature of these issues. And if Douglas Ross, he is absolutely rightly raising these issues with me when they arise with the SNP, but if he's really saying that this is somehow a problem uniquely for the SNP, then I would argue he is demonstrating that he doesn't understand the systemic, society-wide nature of these issues. So I will take these issues very seriously whenever it is the Scottish Government or the SNP that is accused of having people that have behaved inappropriately. As I said a moment ago, I went through some of the most difficult times of my whole time in politics because I wasn't prepared to have allegations made against somebody who had been very close to me simply swept under the carpet. It's really important that all of us face up to this. For my part, I will, and I would encourage everybody else to do likewise.